Greetings, my name is Sombra, and today I'm going to be explaining the part 2, the sequel to my viral 2021 meme, the Dubstep Iceberg. Okay, so why did I make a part 2? Well, basically, the first list, although it is funny, it was originally just made as a meme for friends, and it's not really a serious representation of the scene. And as a result, it kind of underrepresents and overrepresents parts of the scene. Particularly, it underrepresents the original UK 2000s dubstep scene, and it kind of confined all of the artists from that era to the lowest tier, basically under the assumption that people just getting into like Disciple or Excision Now would not be able to find that very easily, and they'd probably find like Underground Rhythm and Tear Out first. And I've seen that play out with my friends before, but I think the problem with that is that even if those scenes are not very connected, still those artists like Burial and Scream are still very popular. And so I wanted to make a list here that was just much more diverse, much more comprehensive, but still just as funny. And that was really the goal with this. So I'm going to lay down a couple rules here for the groundwork. I'm trying to make this as diverse as possible. I tried to not have too many artists that were too similar, if that makes sense. So like Chime and Ace Aura, for example, would not be both included because I wanted to have representation of different styles because, as we know, dubstep is very diverse, and it's been diverse since the beginning. Other thing I did is I didn't include any artists with ongoing allegations of assault or abuse. I didn't want to do that. If you have a problem with that, then make your own list. Thank you. With those rules out of the way, let's begin with Tier 1. All right, first up, we have Excision. Excision is probably one of the most famous dubstep artists of all time. He's known for his music festival, his own label, and his brand of just like really aggressive, really simplistic dubstep that goes off live at shows. And he's kind of inspired this whole like headbanger cult to go along with him. Next up, we have Illenium. Illenium is an artist who has just had meteoric rise to popularity in the last few years, basically for his very radio-friendly, poppy kind of blend of feature bass and melodic dubstep. Skrillex, oh boy, we all know Skrillex. Skrillex basically reinvented the 2000s UK dubstep sound in around 2010 with just his blistering, chaotic, like electro-infused, heavy sound of dubstep. And this was quickly kind of termed bro step by the critics, and I'm going to continue to use that term to differentiate in this video, but I understand that might bother some people. I don't care. That's just what we're going to do. He does not really make that much dubstep anymore. However, we can't ignore the impact of his original singles. We really can't. Subtronics. Subtronics is known for his blend of kind of rhythm and tear out, bro step, all those kinds of things. And he's a relatively new artist to the mainstream. He was originally on like labels like Black Label, Disciple Roundtable, stuff like that. He's most famous for his song Grizztronics, the very aptly titled collaboration between Grizz and Subtronics, which had a lot of TikTok fame. All right, next up, Virtual Riot. Virtual Riot is the most famous artist of the most mainstream dubstep label, which is Disciple. And he has so much variety in his music, all types of different bass music, from happy to dark to everything in between. And side note, he's also very well known for his preset and sample packs, which can be seen all over the scene in thousands of songs. Eptic blew up on the scene with his first release on Never Say Die at age 18, which was definitely a feat back then. And he's kind of had this very interesting style of very kind of cartoonish, simplistic dubstep with like very playful melodies and the like. And he's still relevant today, so many years later. Kill the Noise originally came out in like 2011 with this very aggressive, almost like metal-inspired take on dubstep, and he's evolved as an artist throughout the years. He sometimes returns to the genre. Ray Volpe is a relative newcomer to the mainstream. He's been making brostep for many, many years, but he really blew up last year with his track Laser Beam, which has been played all over, and since then he's even had a collaboration with Marshmello. All right, Sullivan King. Sullivan King is the most popular artist that has combined kind of metal and dubstep. He's a singer, he's a guitar player, he's a producer. Sudden Death. Sudden Death is probably one of the most distinctive artists in the scene right now. Just he has this aesthetic. It's very dark. He does so many theatrical things at his shows. He even has his own festival now, Summoning of the Eclipse. Dubstep Gutter, famous YouTube channel, been around for years. What else can I say? Keizo. Keizo is famous for his blend of like bro step and hard dance. He's kind of blended these styles together quite a bit and has gained immense popularity since then for doing so. Zomboy, one of the most famous figures in brostep, been around since his Never Say Die debut in 2011, been spearheading the style for years and years and years since then, still doing it now. Flux Pavilion, famous for his more melodic take on dubstep with tracks like I Can't Stop, which was just a massive hit. And even though he hasn't made much dubstep since then, he's kind of returning to the style. He's kind of in a similar space as Illenium with that kind of future bass and melodic dubstep mix. Wooly, headbanger, stomp. He combines brostep and rhythm into Bridum. He's worked a lot with Excision in the recent years. He's just very popular. Crank Dat originally started with kind of more hybrid trap, different styles of EDM, but recently has gone all in on like electro house and brostep and all these kinds of things, and has really become one of the most popular artists in the scene for doing so. Peekaboo. Peekaboo became popular through his blend of kind of the original UK sound and also hybrid trap. He's most known for his collaboration with G-Rex, Babatunde, which has inspired countless copycats throughout the years. And last up, we have Kai Wachi, who's a rather diverse artist on this list. He's made stuff from hybrid trap to rhythm to tarot to even more melodic stuff. But he's most known for like his weightlifting bodybuilder brand. And that concludes Tier 1. Tier 2 begs for Lost Lands tickets. Okay, as I said earlier, Excision is the head of the Lost Lands Festival. And this festival attracts so many, like tens of thousands of people a year. I see people online all the time, like the average festival goer just begging for tickets. It's a common thing. All right, Disciple. Disciple is currently the most mainstream dubstep label after Never Say Die kind of collapsed last year, and it's been around since around 2013. It's kind of a sister label to Never Say Die. I don't know if many people know that. Like, they were involved in its founding, Schism was, and they continue to release today with their sub-label as well, Disciple Roundtable. Space Laces, one of the most revered figures in the bass scene for sure, from just like electro house to trap to drum and bass to brostep. He's just covered it all. His production, his sound design, his ideas, his grooves. He's just kind of incredible. Hole is pretty new to kind of the mainstream scene. His like biggest success recently has been Fortet playing country rhythm as a joke. Hole is most known for his just like very distorted, aggressive take on rhythm with just ridiculous subs. Rusko is a figure in the original kind of UK scene of the 2000s and kind of evolved dubstep into a more like bright, aggressive territory, which back then was called tear out, which tear out means something else now. I'll get into that later. I've never liked that change. But he himself blames himself for causing brostep, which is really funny. There's an interview in which he talks about that. He's still very, very relevant today. Phase 1. Phase 1 is also someone who's combined metal and dubstep in the past. Nowadays, he's working with like famous metalcore bands and just doing these like bass collaborations with drum and bass, techno, all these different styles. He's had releases on Firepower, Disciple, and he's kind of going to become a very popular figure over the years. Burial is a figure in the UK scene of the 2000s known for his just like very introspective, immersive kind of combination of just like groovy dubstep beats, ambient atmosphere, and just like really catchy songwriting through like sampled R&B vocals and the like. He's most known for his 2007 album Untrue, which is not only considered the best dubstep album of all time, but one of the best albums of all time, period. Burial is definitely my favorite dubstep artist, I'll have to say it. But if you're someone who's into, like, Excision, there's definitely a contrast. I'll say that. Oliverse is someone who has come out recently with this blend of almost like the classic Flux Pavilion style, like the more wobbly, melodic take that combined Tear Out of the Day and then brostep. Scream is one of the first superstars in the 2000s UK dubstep movement, and today he's still very relevant, even though he doesn't really make much dubstep anymore. He was really known for that psychedelic, bright, colorful take on the style, and he mostly makes disco, house, all these types of things now, but he's still just very relevant. He gets so many plays, and his classics still hold up to this day. AU5 is an artist who's known for his just like very colorful, very immersive, just like incredible sound design. And he originally blew up from his singles on Monster Cat in like 2014. Still very relevant today. His music is very unique, very influential. Teminite. Teminite is an interesting figure. He's kind of combined Brostep with his ability to like play multiple instruments, with his jazz background. Calcium is kind of an artist that is known for just kind of his more mainstream take on rhythm, and he really is kind of stuck with that style throughout the years. Riot. Riot originally became popular through their singles on Monster Cat, such as Overkill, lots of others, which they just this very cinematic, very exciting, very complex take on Brostep, and those singles are some of the most popular dubstep songs ever released. Chime. Chime is definitely an influential figure in kind of the modern melodic dubstep movement. He's kind of coined the term color bass to describe his own combination of heavy dubstep and the melodic dubstep of the day, similar to like Millennium, Seven Lions, and the like. He also has his own label, and we'll talk about that later. Must Die. Must Die is a figure who's delved into all regions of bass at this point, but he originally became popular through his dubstep. He has 3 albums under his belt at this point. He's very true to himself. We'll put it that way. Spaghetti. Spaghetti is one of the most popular and influential figures in the older Brostep scene. Originally, he was known for kind of a more melodic, playful take, and over the years, his music has become much more rough and aggressive. He's still very relevant today. Murata is probably the most popular modern tear out / deathstep artist. His music is absolutely brutal. It has been for years. It usually became popular in 2017, mostly due to his releases on Never Say Die Black Label. And he's created some of the most popular tracks of the last few years. He really has invented just like heavy dubstep in a new way that no one else had before. Dion Timmer. He basically blew up at like age 15, 16 due to collaborations with Excision and others. He's done more poppy, like future bassy music. He's done all different types of styles within bass music, from the heavy to the melodic to the dark to the happy. And I think that's the reason why he's become so popular. Old James Blake. Yes, James Blake, if you don't know him, the English singer-songwriter. He originally started out with making chill psychedelic dubstep in like 2005, 2006, and he's really made some of the most influential cuts of all time. If you're a new school person, you probably won't be familiar with them, but I recommend you go check out stuff like Limit to Your Love, just this really unique mix of singer-songwriter and just like very low-key dubstep. It's very interesting. ATLians. Okay, ATLians. The masked anonymous DJs known for making just like really weird, out of bounds, kind of hybrid trap, experimental stuff. Liquid Stranger and Wakan. Liquid Strangers also kind of fits in that realm of experimental bass, and that's kind of what he founded his label Wakan after, which is just like very freeform bass. That's what he titles it. It's just kind of like a weird combination of styles, and it's become very popular over the years. Hamdi. Hamdi is a very, very new figure to the scene. He kind of got popular after his massive breakthrough hit Skanka, which was also played by Skrillex in his Quest for Fire basement set, which was instantly blew that song up to even higher heights. And basically, he does a take on the original UK sound, the UK tear-out sound more specifically. Just very groovy, very on your face. Mode Step they originally like a Brostep X rock band act in like 2010, 2011. And over the years, members have kind of left and they've become a little less relevant and dove in more into like rhythm, Brostep without the rock band element. But the sole remaining member is still the original singer, and so a lot of their tunes still feature his vocals, which is very cool. Now it's time to go on to tier 3, but before I do that, let's sip some tea. That rhymed. Let's go. First up, we have Truth and Deep, Dark, and Dangerous. Truth is currently a duo between 2 artists who kind of do this more modern take on the original UK dubstep sound. Just deep, introspective, all those types of things. But they do have a lot of variety in their music. They've done more aggressive stuff, darker stuff, low-key stuff, more melodic stuff. And originally they had more members, but as of now, they're still going. still making lots of bass music they release frequently. Their label Deep, Dark, and Dangerous is the most mainstream, I'd say, of the original UK dubstep sound labels. However, this label is not liked by purists of the genre. We'll put it that way. It's most frequently criticized as a as a merch cult. I've heard those exact words come out of purists' mouths like, yeah, interesting description, but are they wrong? They just don't like it because it's more a commercial take on not only the sound but the marketing, and that understandably is not appealing to them. Next up we have Naughty Step. Oh yes, Naughty Step is basically the most famous bass music reviewer of all time. He has so many reviews where he goes really into depth, where he really just reviewed bass music in a way that no one else had done before it was just kind of like substanceless reactions. I really have to respect the guy. He puts in so much effort. He just listens to so much music to find the best stuff to review. Next up we have Funkcase and DPMO. All right. Funkcase is known for his very heavy, very aggressive style of tear-out dubstep and brostep. A lot of his most famous singles are on Circus Records, and recently he has founded his own label, Don't Piss Me Off, based off of his 2013 album title. And this label kind of features more underground, slick-sounding rhythm and tear-out. They don't release that frequently, but they still have quite a big impact on the scene. All right, modern French scene. Okay, usually I would not group a group of artists together by their nationality, but I feel like this is an exception because a lot of the modern like rhythm and tear-out artists in the French scene have kind of banded together. Some names would be like Samplifier, Graphite, E-Craze, Ivory, Bezo, Dr. Ushu, and they've even like gone as far to make multiple mega collaborations such as Le Club and Stomp. And it's really interesting how this band of artists has maintained a consistent style. As a side note, the drum and bass and dubstep duo Dirty Phonics I would also include under this bracket, but do keep in mind they are much more popular than the other artists listed, but they have collaborated with them a lot. 1985 Music. This is a dubstep and drum and bass label spearheaded by Alex Perez, who does make both sounds. This label is also not very respected by purists, but I'd say it's a little more so because of how influential a figure Alex Perez is. I've also heard 1985 described as a merch cult. Doesn't mean they don't make good music, though. Doesn't mean they don't put out good stuff. Nimda. Okay, Nimda is a pretty recent figure. He's been making music for a long time, but he's really exploded in popularity recently. He just makes this very like aggressive, energetic blend of just like brutal tear-out and almost like brostep influences. This is kind of like the new tear-out wave, and he's also pushed this through his label Mentis. Tons of artists under this classification. I really like the style. Code 9 is a 2000s UK dubstep artist, most known for his album with Space Ape called Memories of the Future, which is a really interesting project. Moody Good is a figure like Space Laces, in which he's been very highly regarded for both his really unique style, his production, and he originally kind of became popular through his duo 16-Bit with Jazzwan, which has since separated quite a long time ago. Benga's another figure in the 2000s UK London scene. He was kind of like best friends with Scream for a while, and even though Scream is a lot more relevant now, I still think Benga's kind of like high energy, very groovy take on the genre is still very fresh. Still sounds great to this day. Muerte is a relative newcomer and kind of the mainstream. He's known for this really like aggressive and cinematic kind of combination of like rhythm and tear out, and then just like orchestral elements, musical elements. His music is occasionally emotional. He was originally known as Exclusion for years, so he's been around for a while. Bussin' from the Underground. Okay, this is a really popular vocal sample from one of the Effin packs. It's been overused so much. I just put this in here to represent just kind of like the culture of overusing samples and vocal samples to the point of cliche. DMZ, Digital Mystics. Okay, Digital Mystics is a duo between Mala and Koki, both two very important figures in the 2000s UK scene once again. I always found their partnership to be very interesting, as Mala makes more like deep, introspective, melodic stuff, and Koki's sound is like so dark and so rough, but together they really formed kind of an interesting sound. And Digital Mystics went on to turn their name into a record label as well as time went on. Leotrix is a pretty recent figure in kind of the rhythm scene. And even though he really only sticks to one structure for the most part. Not saying there are exceptions. He originally did kind of get popular for hybrid trap. He's just done so much with this rhythm sound, from like really deep to the heavier to like really melodic and emotional. He's made some of my favorite tunes, I have to say. I love his music. Deep Medi is one of the original 2000s UK dubstep labels. It helped really blow up a lot of artists back then. Very influential. Dr. Ozzy. Dr. Ozzy has been a pretty long-standing brostep figure. Very unique sound. Nowadays, he even has his own label, Hardtooth Records, which he's starting to push new stuff. His music is very energetic, occasionally like cinematic, very grand, ominous. Ominous is kind of a keystone in the rhythm scene, although he's also known for his jump up drum and bass. Even though he's not terribly popular, his music is very highly regarded and influential for the scene. The Bug is another 2000s UK artist. He's put out multiple albums, and I'd say he's most known for his work with the vocalists. Skang is his most popular tune, and it is just absolutely a blood-curdling tune. It is so raw and so dark. It's a classic. Faizo is an artist, a few tracks, but the songs that he has put out have been so influential. Just his like very high-tech take on rhythm and tear out. He's made one of the most popular dubstep songs of all time in Jotaro, with many others like Pattern Screamer, Close Combat, to name a couple others. Joker is another artist from the 2000 scene. He coined the term purple sound, which is used to describe his brand of very like bright, colorful melodic dubstep, and he really hasn't released very much in the last few years, but he really was a keystone back then. Inhuman is the new alias of famous deathstep and terror producer Code Pandorum. He had such a definable sound back in the day, and he's really just been branching out after rebranding to all different types of bass music, working with vocalists, doing tons of things. Still a very relevant figure today. Tynan is a bit of an oddball, to quote the name of his last EP. He's been all over the bass spectrum, made some really unique stuff. Infect is perhaps the most highly regarded rhythm artist of all time. He has such a distinctive style that has just become so popular over the years, and he just keeps getting more and more popular through his shows, his tunes. Flowdon, I mentioned earlier, as the vocalist on Skang. Basically, he's just a rapper with a very like deep, guttural delivery, and he's been around all the way since the early 2000s and is still relevant now. Recently, he featured on Skrillex and Ferdigan's mega hit, Rumble. Bite the bullet, but don't swallow it. Okay, so this is referencing Yuki Fission EP, which is a very hated EP, the first EP to come out on Excision's Subsidia Records, and I kind of wanted to put this in to represent just kind of the scene's hatred of Subsidia when it first blew up, even though it's still very popular with the audience, so who's to say? Then we have Warship's All My Homies Hate Skrillex video. So All My Homies Hate Skrillex is a documentary by Timba on Toast, and it basically explained how dubstep shifted from the original 2000 sound in London to the really aggressive mainstream sound of Skrillex. It's a very scathing video. He really doesn't hold back on his feelings. For that reason, people either hate it or they love it. I personally think it's great, and if you don't know what I'm talking about with dubstep existed before Skrillex, then I really recommend you go watch that video. I think it'll make a lot of the stuff further down this list more clear. Tier 4. Cried when Black Label closed. Okay. Black Label is a sub-label of Never Said I Records, perhaps the most influential and popular dubstep label of all time, even though Disciple is more mainstream now. And Black Label was their imprint founded in 2014, 2015, that basically pushed rhythm and tear out. And it released some of the most popular releases of all time, just like some really, really good material. And when it closed 2 years ago, people were very sad. This is the heavily memed vocal sample from Yasuo by Crowell and Bomber, just one of the most popular rhythm songs of all time. I think to me it just represents how a really unique vocal sample can just make a song so memorable. Halcyon and Rushdown. Both these labels are kind of a different side of the same coin of modern melodic dubstep music. Rushdown is the label, of course, owned by Chime, and Halcyon is the label owned by Ulasile. Although they do push slightly different sounds, I would kind of put them in the same space. They represent so many artists, so many great releases, some of the best stuff that's come out in the last 2 years for sure. Ikios is a recent rhythm artist who kind of blew up through her 2019 EP Labyrinth on Never Said I Black Label, and her just very clean sound design, irresistible grooves have just been so influential to the scene. Heard so many copycats, really kind of changed the shape of it. and she still puts out great music today. White Peach is a modern record label that focuses on the original UK sound. I put this label on here to kind of represent the modern labels that are more accepted by purists, because this label is still very popular, even with the quote-unquote true heads. There are plenty of other labels like this out there. I can't really include them all on this list. You know, space is my bane here. If you want to know more stuff like this label, I'll put the link down below for my Dubstep labels list of 300 labels from over the years that I found. Nipteen is an artist that represents kind of the bro step revivalism movement, where people kind of reject the more monotonous rhythm of the day and want to go back to Skrillex's more chaotic style of bro step. Nipteen kind of achieves this through his energetic sound and his sound design that's kind of a modernized version of the classic growls and screeches and such. Another artist like this would be Zenith. Calls it trench now. So as recent as 6 months ago, there was this movement spearheaded by Infect to rename rhythm to trench. Now the reasoning behind this is that rhythm is actually a stolen genre name from Jamaican dancehall. It also sounds goofy. So he really tried to push this movement to rename the genre, and it got a lot of people involved, but ultimately was kind of unsuccessful. People still call it rhythm. Eugene. Eugene is one of the most interesting dubstep artists as of now. He combines the original sound, hybrid trap, rhythm, and even his own like falsetto vocals into this really interesting blend. I love his music. It's very expressive. It's very dark. His production is so unique. Just wanted to put him here. As we go down this list and we kind of devolve into more of the jokes, as is the spirit of the original meme, I tried to make the artist inclusions very purposeful to artists that are just very unique, very different, and people that can kind of be categorized under a certain movement or a certain sound, or just very similar to another artist I didn't really want to include. So that way there was variety and there was very standoffish figures being presented. Yes. Once another UKF dubstep tutorial. UKF, one of the most famous YouTube channels, one for drum and bass, one for dubstep, one for neither. They have a famous set of tunes called Dubstep Tutorial, which were made by Dubba Johnny, and there's 3 different versions of these songs, and this was just kind of a joke of people want another now. But it's been 10 years, it's not going to happen. Dyadic is a really interesting artist. He's just really been pushing the boundaries lately with his kind of modern take, moving away from the more simplistic structures of rhythm and just like really rapid rhythms and crazy arrangements, kind of going back to the spirit of bro step with a very modern sound design. If you're looking for more artists like him, check out Butte Noise, Jin Soul, and Ganymed. Those are people who have all done similar styles, and I love the style. Firepower Records is the label that was owned by Dat Sick, who I'm not mentioning in this list for reasons. This label has been extinct for many years now. I think it's been like since 2018. This label was just kind of a very influential bro step label for many years, but a lot of people still go back and listen to these classic songs. Dak Daniels is an artist who makes heavy rhythm and beyond, and he also has his own label community type of thing with 40 Ounce Colt. Sub-Low Playlist. So there's a Spotify editorial playlist called Sub-Low, which basically focuses on the classic take of dubstep, which focuses more on low frequencies rather than kind of the mid-range and high end of today. This playlist is extremely popular and kind of includes a wide blend of tunes. Phonon is a very unique artist who blew up with his hit single Polyrhythm in 2020. The single basically blended the rules of time signatures and microtonality into this really bizarre piece of dubstep. This song was immensely popular, got talked about all over the place on YouTube, and he hasn't released in quite a bit, but I still think his music is so unique. Lofa is an artist from the UK 2000 scene. His music mostly features kind of very cavernous atmospheres and heavy wobbles. Dub Police is a very influential label from the original 2000 scene. Featured artists like The Others, Caspa, Rusko, among others. Lots of famous people are on this label. This label has been extinct for well over like 15 years now, though. Xcore is a bro step artist from the early 2000s who doesn't have a very large discography, and he hasn't made music in a long time, but a lot of the music he has made is very popular and influential, especially like his remixes for Mode Step. I'm going to turn this off for a second. Let my old bones rest.
Is it hot over there? Politics?
We talk about the things that no one else wants to talk about.
DeSantis?
Being a podcast owner is the most effective form of male birth control. Get her your facts straight. This is a reference to the beef between Excision and Getter, in which Getter basically accused Excision of being ghost produced and ripping off Space Laces in a recent song. And Excision responded by this absolutely horrendous video of him with this fucking dinosaur robot monster voice changer. It was quite the day. Evil Wave. Evil Wave is one of the more interesting figures, I think, in modern dubstep, in which he originally started out making things like Spaghetti, just like a very melodic, upbeat take on the sound. And then in 2016, he just suddenly switched to releasing on Crow's Nest and making death step. And initially, he wasn't excellent at the sound, but come 2017, he puts out the Asylum EP, which is genuinely one of my favorite dubstep EPs of all time for its production value, its scale, its scope, its instrumentation, its sound design. It's just like, it's truly a masterpiece in my eyes. Sounds like Terror Squad. Terror Squad is, of course, Zomboy's 2014 Brostep hit that was basically an unconscious ripoff of Skrillex's All Is Fair in Love and Brostep, which was named that to spite Zomboy. And this was a frequent phrase you'd hear in like SoundCloud comments around like 2015 to like 2017 to basically describe any like really generic Brostep that had those same kind of like washing machine synths and like boring syncopated rhythms. I think it just very much represents this era of the sound. Sorrow. Sorrow is an artist who's been compared to Burial a lot. Basically, he does this very chill take on dubstep that's similar to the original sound, with like instrumentation and ambient passages and the like. His music is a lot more modern than a lot of that stuff, though, with like really hi-fi production and insane textures. I think it's really worth listening to myself. Jiki is an artist who's become popular in recent times for his blend of rhythm and hybrid trap. I think a lot of his music is just really unique, which is why I felt I had to include him here. Complains about Loompa Sketty. Loompa Sketty, of course, being the meme alias of some unknown producers who's been frequently releasing on Disciple. And the argument is that it's taking opportunities and slots away from people who could potentially be having that spot. There's a lot of controversy surrounding this drawn goat who releases minimal rhythm. That's the current state of the scene, folks. On to Tier 5, starting with Subfiltronic. Not Subtronics. Subfiltronic is, of course, an artist that's kind of attributed to helping to originate rhythm, especially with his like singles like Pass Out, which have become immensely popular and highly regarded over the years. To me, this represents the shift towards like rhythm elitism, people really talking about the origins of the genre and deciding what is rhythm and isn't. A lot of people don't consider Subtronic's rhythm anymore. They feel he's kind of ventured too far in the Brostep direction. /MU Essential Dubstep. /MU, of course, being the music side of 4chan. Strangely enough, that's something I didn't know until I looked it up today. And Essential Dubstep is basically a list of classic dubstep albums they made, stuff before 2010, of course. It's actually a great list, includes many essential albums and artists on there, and I think it's one that's very highly regarded by the purists too. I think it's a great list as well. So if you're looking to get into some of those classics, I think that's a great place to start. Grocery Boys, of course, being the very large collective of upcoming rhythm and tarot producers. It features quite a few members at this point, such as Sweet Tooth, J Moss, etc. There's a ton of them. Fun group of people. They do shows, they do music, all the above. Knows every Boonda member. Oh yeah, baby. So Boonda was the anonymous rhythm and tarot meme alias that kind of spread throughout SoundCloud and kind of got immense popularity. At the end, peaking with a Disciple Roundtable EP of all things. And basically it was revealed not too long ago that it was actually a group effort between like 10 different underground rhythm and tarot producers. And I don't even remember all the members. But you, my hypothetical iceberg man, you certainly do. Battle Royale comps. So the Battle Royale compilations were very highly regarded compilations from 12th Planet's label Smog Recordings. These compilations featured some of the most famous rhythm songs of all time, like Yasuo by Kroll and Bomber, which I mentioned earlier, as well as Jotaro by Pfizer, which I also mentioned earlier. The Brig. The Brig is a really bizarre artist, as his name suggests. He basically makes pirate dubstep. His music is kind of gone through a lot of evolutions of the years. It's changed a lot. Usually it's very jovial, very upbeat, lots of like experimentation in different tempos and styles. And he's really just one of the strangest, most standoffish artists, I think, in that respect. Joe B, of course, being the tarot phenomenon that blew up due to Odd Prophet, that since has kind of moved into new territory, especially this new EP on Halcyon, Gaga Tones, which is my favorite dubstep EP of the year so far. And it's just like melodic R&B, groove-ridden stuff. And seriously, I think he's had so much impact. A lot of artists I know in the underground tarot scene have cited him as like their number one inspiration. YVM3 Reddit theories. So YVM3 is, of course, the anonymous artist that to this point is still anonymous, that has been supported by Sudden Death as well as other upcoming acts. Actually saw their debut show at Red Rocks. And basically they combine like deathcore, almost like dark ambient, and then dubstep into this really unique combination of sounds. And as their identity is still unknown, there have been quite a few theories about who they are. Someone even said that they were Yax, Murata, and Void, with a 3 to represent it as a trio, but apparently that's wrong, despite how much sense it makes. Goth Trad is another artist from the UK 2000 scene. He's not quite as well known as others on here, but his music was still very much supported by the likes of Mala and many others. Rude Service AI Art. Rude Service, of course, being the label owned by Bear Grylls. And recently they've taken quite a cheap route. And all of their cover art is just really cheap AI art, and it just spawned a lot of controversy. And I just kind of chose to include this because of the recent pushback of AI art in the bass music scene. High-tech Deviate Azel video. Oh boy. Wah, 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 wah. Okay. So Azel is a beatboxer and reactor who gained a lot of traction after artists sent him their tunes to do his like crazy arm flailing reactions to. Unfortunately, he was outed as a predator, so we don't really talk about him anymore. But this video is still extremely famous. Even Snoop Dogg posted it at one point. And Yo, it's Ro. How you doing? I'm including this in the video. I'm not taking this out. This is a precious moment. All right, next up we have Vulgar. Vulgar is an underground rhythm artist who's been gaining a lot of traction as of late. His music was played by YVM3 at Red Rocks, as well as by Sudden Death and Marshmello, and their recent back-to-back at EDC. Jewel is a really unique artist in the scene who's been constantly making very unique Middle Eastern infused experimental dubstep. His first release ever was on a Never Said I Black label comp, and I don't really think of any artist that can say that. And even though he doesn't release as much anymore, I still think he's one of the more interesting acts. That awful Dante Bors video. Okay, so there was this documentary made by this guy named Dante Bors. It was like 10 minutes long. It's basically called The Death of Dubstep. And basically in the video, he cites that Skrillex created dubstep. And then it also cites the reason is that dubstep is dead is because of this random Rick and Morty remix by Subject 31. It's not a good video. I'm not even gonna post an image of it. It doesn't deserve the attention. Disciple White Label. Okay, so this is of course a reference to Disciple Roundtable, and when that sublabel was first announced, even Schism himself, the owner of Never Say Die, said it was just a rip-off of Never Say Die Black Label because it kind of featured the same type of styles and concept. It was just like another sister label, and this sparked some really entertaining beef in the summer of 2017 between Disciple and Never Say Die. The aggressors, of course, being Never Say Die. Disciple just kind of hung back and let it happen. Funnily enough, Roundtable today has risen to be one of the most mainstream and influential dubstep labels in the scene, kind of like Black Label was back then too. And it does, in a way, fill the void that Black Label left when it collapsed 2 years ago. Get Darker is a YouTube channel that's basically dedicated to the old sound of dubstep. Basically features classic tunes, mixes, among other things. Shivers, the Butcher. Okay, so this guy is a really famous MC occasionally, as well as dubstep DJ. He's known for his insane chopping and mixing skills. TMSV is a modern kind of UK dubstep producer that's still around today. Has a somewhat like quirky, playful style, and he also releases a ton of like jungle and other genres. He's a very multifaceted artist. Savage Society is the rhythm and tarot label founded in 2013 by Blankface and Savage Maze. A ton of artists have released on here, and I think it kind of represents kind of the modern rhythm and tarot movement still to this day. Still a relevant label. Basic is one of the most interesting artists in the scene as of recent, in my opinion. He used to have such a high output on audio records, which we'll talk about that later. And recently has just kind of evolved into this like hybrid like IDM and dubstep sound, and he released Blissful Gaze of Ignorance EP on Disciple of last year, which in my opinion is one of the most creative and impressive dubstep EPs of all time. Seriously, even though he's not that popular, his music is incredible. It's not something you want to miss. Still waiting for Monk's merch. Okay, Monk's is a fairly famous rhythm artist who isn't as active anymore, and basically he's just known for not following through with merch orders and canceling shows all of the time. He's known as just like a very unreliable person in the scene and has been clowned on quite a bit. In fact, he canceled a show in my hometown recently as well. He doesn't give up the disappointment grind, does he? Starting off tier 6, we have Twitter famous tarot producers. There's been a recent trend where you'll have these producers that just kind of get famous off of just being memes on Twitter or just posting like really popular clips of songs. And I feel like it's been a really common trend for these to be like experimental tarot producers. Some people I'd mention in this field would be like Destiny, Aztaroth, Kaifu, Excellent, among others. It's just a really strange phenomenon. And the reason I think about it is because my friend Ravonix mentioned it to me, and he said he refused to listen to any of them. It was funny. Welcome to London vocal. So Flodan has a famous grime song called Welcome to London, and the vocal from that song has been used so many times in bootlegs and other tunes and like. The Fetch beef. Oh man, this is a touchy topic. Fetch is the current manager of both Murata and his label Malignant Music, and a lot of artists behind the scenes such as Stag, Digitist, Quiet, Inhuman have had some really adverse experiences with the guy, and there's been a lot of talk about it, even though a lot of the information is pretty hidden. I don't really feel like I should go deeper than that on this, though. As I said earlier, as we get deeper on this list, I wanted to make sure the artist inclusions were like very unique people, and I think I definitely have to mention Skyveer on that. Such unique sound, blends kind of like deeper dubstep with this really like pounding sound design and rhythm structures. Some of the most unique stuff I've ever heard. Really worth a listen. Stella Sessions is of course, the podcast between Scream and Banga that ran in the 2000s. Lots of true heads have described how much they loved it back in the days. And even though it doesn't exist anymore, I'm sure it had a lot of influence back in the time when it was running. Knows every Dalla alias. So Dalla is an experimental tarot producer who's been around for a long time, and the man has had a lot of aliases and has made music under so many different names, and a lot of them are still kind of unknown. If there's a new artist on an interval audio comp that you've never heard of before and they have no music out, it's probably a Dalla alias. That's the rule of thumb. Nettie is an artist who's been gaining traction as of late for his YouTube channel. One thing, he does lots of tutorial and production videos, but also he has so much variety in his music. He's made Tear Out. He's made like a complextro EP. He's made melodic stuff. He's made rhythm. And for that reason, I felt like he was worth the inclusion here. Full Flex Audio is probably one of the most quality underground labels you ever find. They've put out so much boundary-pushing, unique, high-quality music over the years. And I think really one of the underground labels to watch for sure. Toasty is one of the original dubstep artists from like 2004. He doesn't have that much music out, but the music he has out is stuff I really enjoy. It's this very like rave-inspired, very danceable take on the original dubstep sound. Vocal samples, bright chords, driving rhythms, very cool stuff. Lee Jennings wins the Masters. Man, this is a quote that's been said so many times by producers like Achios, and it's basically just... Wait a minute. I gotta look up, is Neonix's real name Lee Jennings? Oh my god, he has a LinkedIn account? What the hell? Neonics worked for Great Wolf Lodge? That's so funny. Anyway. Sunny Moore Dating Simulator is, of course, the very in-depth game in which you get to play in the dubstep high school as Skrillex, and then there's Banga and Datsik and some of these other people. I don't really know anything about it, but it's cultivated quite the cult following recently, and I've heard some wild things about it from people who've played it. So if you want to play a really bizarre fanfic that will teach you some origins of the genre as well, I think, feel free. Jorai is an experimental rhythm artist whose music is entirely based off of a fantasy series that she likes. It's a really interesting concept, and as a result, her music is very like cinematic and heavily scored and orchestrated. And her drops are kind of similar to like Ikios, except even more like wild and experimental at times with like these anime vocal chops, and her music is just wild. I think it's a really interesting listen. Sadhu War Footage. Sadhu, of course, being one of the original tarot artists who was popular in the early 2010s, but he has since returned after a long hiatus due to being hacked and being banned from playing in the US and lots of stuff. But apparently he shared a clip of his song featuring real life footage from Ukraine, and people aren't happy about it. I wasn't there to witness this, but I've heard about it a lot. 2562 is an anonymous dubstep artist who released a lot of material in the late 2000s. His music is like this very unique combination of weird beats and atmosphere, pretty unique sound for the day, and he hasn't released music in a long time. Just Fancy Bro. I gotta give love to Just Fancy Bro. Just some guy who has given immense support to artists and comments over SoundCloud. And just people like this have had such an impact over the scene over the years, you know? Devis is a really cool rhythm artist who I adore, who has just some really unique flows, interesting take on the genre, and has just been around for a long time. All right. So why do you think Anthony Fantano of The Needle Drop is nicknamed Melon? Well, it's actually because of dubstep producer Zombie. Zombie did not like the criticisms that Fantano gave of this album, and so he called him a melon. And Zombie in general is known for some mischief, you know, light stuff like death threats, beating up people behind the stage. He's quite the figure. What can I say? Ba is a rather new addition to the scene. He makes some really interesting, just like lo-fi rhythm and dubstep, really experimental stuff. He said recent singles featured on Interval Audio. I think his music is really interesting. It's something to dig into if you're looking for something new, something fresh. His music is just like very grainy, very distorted, occasionally very emotional, occasionally very heavy. Just like a super unique sound, I think. Birthday wish was for Hench to return. Hench is the label that was owned by Jakes, basically the person who's coined along with Subplotronics as starting rhythm and giving it a name and just kind of putting together the quarter notes and the kick clap that we all know today. And Hench was his label for music of this style back in the late 2000s and early 2010s. And this label has not existed for a long time. However, they've had talks of reviving it, and I know there's a lot of people out there that wish, that pray, that really want it to come back. Will their prayers be answered? We've yet to see. Knows why Odio closed. Okay. Odio was an underground brostep rhythm tarot label that I would compare to like Disciple Roundtable in a way, in terms of sound, styles, aesthetic, even some of the artists featured. They had this facade of being very professionally run and high quality, but last year it was revealed that their owner had made racist jokes in a Discord server, and from there, it was revealed that he had also abused his artists and staff for years, and the label immediately disappeared after that. And it's gone forever now. But at the moment, their music is still around. I recommend you go check some of it out if you can. Some high quality stuff. Guido is a dubstep artist who released his most famous work in 2010, which is his album Anidea, which is just this very like colorful proto-melodic dubstep kind of thing with simplistic, punchy beats. And I chose to include him on here because at the time his sound was very unique and it was very highly regarded by greats of the scene. Executioner, perhaps one of the most experimental chart artists ever, and for just like distorted, crunchy, just like brutal soundtracks. Seriously, his stuff is wild, and it's good to see him getting support from artists as big as Sudden Death still nowadays. 2016 Rhythm Cruise ending in Z. Man, what an era that was when you'd go on SoundCloud and you'd find some random guy and he had this like bracketed like crew name in his username. You click on it, you have like 10 other rhythm artists from Russia that sounded exactly the same. There were hundreds of artists like this, absolutely hundreds. And I feel like this is a very influential movement, even though you don't really see these crews very often now. Welcome Dubstep Bottom Feeder. Oh my God. We have made it. Welcome Dubstep Bottom Feeders to Tier 7. Oh boy. First off, we have knows over 300 dubstep labels. This is me because I made a list with 300 dubstep labels on it. It took a long time, and I'm sure I missed a lot of them. So if you're one of those people, then I feel like you've kind of hit rock bottom. Next up, we have Blame SpongeBob for indirectly causing brostep. SpongeBob is the tune from Cokie, made in 2007, which is basically a song that at the time featured very like bright and aggressive bass lines, which is a change from the more introspective and deep stuff of the day. And this style, which became known as tear out in the day, that's what tear out originally meant. I don't know why Deathstep was renamed tear out in 2017. That's something I might do a video on later. But this song was extremely influential, and a lot of people at the time like had mixed feelings about it because it was just like such a dark and heavy take on the sound, and it really inspired artists like Rusko and others to really take the sound in a more aggressive manner, which kind of eventually led to brostep, the things that all purists hate the most. What can I say? YouTube rips of vinyl records from 2005. Okay, a lot of dubstep classics were originally printed on vinyl more than anything else, and as a result, many of them were not properly distributed to stores like Spotify and the like. And because of that, it's really hard to find a lot of these old records, and a lot of history I feel like has been lost. One of the only places you can really find them anymore is just like YouTube, Dubstep Classics channels, and just places that upload them in like low quality rips, and it's a shame that a lot of the history is kind of reduced to that. The next one is also a reference to that, which has a version of DMZ Haunted without the skip. So Haunted is a tune from Digital Mystics, the duo between Mala and Cokie that we talked about earlier. And this song was released in 2004. It's a great song, has some awesome sound design, very playful, great groove, great wobbles. However, for some reason, the YouTube uploads that have been circulating of this song all have this like random skip, like a minute in, where it just like skips a couple seconds ahead. And apparently this is so prevalent that like DJs as big as like Hacha have been like caught playing the version of the skips. And I heard someone mention once they actually have a version without the skip, and I feel like if you get there, you're a beluga whale on this list. I'm sorry, you are. Could blacklist many artists with interval audio Discord screenshots. A few years ago, the interval audio Discord server was home of many like now famous dubstep artists. I won't name names. I'm not getting into that. And there's just like so many screenshots of like people saying like extremely like bigoted things on there, and like occasionally stuff from these servers comes up. I really wish I'd never seen these screenshots. It's kind of like changed my perspective on things. Regardless, I just don't know what was going on at the time. Like, why was there this culture of that in the server? Regardless, I don't want to blame the owner of Interval Audio, because I feel like the label's done a great job of cleaning up their image in recent times. It's just interesting that so much happened there. Dubstep Wars is a show that happened in South London in the mid 2000s that's basically like accredited to kind of blowing the genre up. Lots of people played, such as Mala and one half of Vexed, the dubstep duo. I've just heard this is an incredibly influential show, and it just had such a massive impact. But considering it's just one show that happened, almost 18 years ago, it didn't feel right to include this in a higher tier. Dubplate.net was an old website used for sharing IDs, which is the sound system term for unreleased songs. And so basically on this website, people would kind of share their IDs, their dub plates, and this site has been extinct for a long, long time. But recently I found someone mention that they have a Wayback archive of it, which is just absolutely insane. And if you have a Wayback archive of that thing, you are also a beluga whale. I'm sorry. Neil Joliffe is the owner of Tempa, which is one of the very first dubstep and garage labels, and he is accredited to coining the term dubstep in 2002. I think that's some really interesting piece of genre history. I read an article about it, and I suggest you research that too if you're interested. And lastly, we have knows Big Apple Records' former address on Surrey Street. I mean, this is kind of a beautiful piece of history to me. Big Apple Records, along with Tempo, were some of the very first dubstep labels, and Big Apple Records in particular released Anti-War Dub and Haunted, the double from Digital Mystics, which is one of the first like big dubstep records. Recently, I found an article that tracks the exact address of where this record shop was. That record shop, in a way, is like the birthplace of the genre, which is just insane that this record store inspired what I'm talking about sitting here over 20 years later. It's just absolutely maddening to me. And that's why I made this list at the end of the day. I want people to really get immersed in this history, to really know where all this stuff came from, because not a lot of people know. I mean, the roots of this genre are so gate kept because of the massive shift that happened in 2010 with Skrillex. I think it's a beautiful thing for me to just know all of this history. At the end of the day, I'm a 19-year-old. I only joined the scene in 2015, and I wasn't around for all this stuff. And for that reason, a lot of what I'm saying could be inaccurate. It comes from research. And feel free to let me know in the comments below if I've messed something up egregiously, but I promise I've tried my best to accurately research everything here. I think it's crazy that my knowledge of this scene that I just turned into a meme has become such a popular thing. And it's crazy to see so many people connect with these goofy images I've made to just kind of represent the change of the genre over the years. I want to thank everyone for supporting these images, and also thank you for watching this video. I really hope you learned something new. I hope it made you laugh. I hope if you're an old head, it made you feel nostalgic. I really hope I got everything right. But at the end of the day, I'm just very thankful to be part of this, and I'm very thankful that my content has connected with so many people. As always, have a good evening, Sombra Society. Goodbye.